Alright, I know I was planning to do a gameplay video this week, but thanks to Ghil Dirthalen, I have been watching far too many of her videos, and I found the talk of companions interesting, and so I wanted to start there. Let's get into it.
Will unite them. You will lead them.
So as I said, I've been watching a lot of Ghil Dirthalen videos, and she puts out a lot of lore videos, but she also does rumors and theories as well. Highly recommend her for anyone that's interested. I'll link to her down in the description. But one of her recent theories that caught me, or at least one of the videos I watched recently, was in regards to the two latest comic book series coming out, Knight Errant and Mage Killer, and she suggested that they're actually trying to introduce 4 of the new companions in the next game by placing them here. And personally, I really like this idea. One, from everything, I haven't read the comic books, so I'll say that straight away, but from everything I have read from all the videos I've watched and reading up on them, they actually do seem like interesting characters. They do tick a lot of the boxes that BioWare likes to have, a bit tragic, a bit broken, and they do seem like they could be integrated quite well, especially where they're going at the end. But one of the things I like about it is it kind of gives them a way to test these characters out. So they release them in comic book form. People then talk about them. They discuss whether or not they like them, what they find interesting about them. It gives them a sort of just a good way to judge if they're going to be dealt with well in the game and if they should add them. So I'm all for this. From everything I've heard, it seems like they're pretty cool characters and they would make interesting additions. So for me personally, really would like to see Marius. He sounds fun. Now, while I would like to talk about what I speculate for the upcoming companions, I'm actually going to talk more about my feelings towards the previous companions we had and what I think worked and what I think didn't work. So this is just my opinions. I know straight up I'm going to not make friends in this video because I'm a bit critical of them, but we all take them different ways, and I think that my standards may have just been a bit higher, especially because I do feel like Mass Effect had these stronger companions than Dragon Age has. I think that's where you set the bar. I think unfortunately Mass Effect 2 set that bar extremely high. We know that's extremely high. And Dragon Age just hasn't quite reached those heights to some degree. But let me elaborate. Now, when it came to Dragon Age Origins, I thought their cast of characters was quite varied, quite good, and I think that was probably their strongest of the trilogy. Now, personally for me, I found the standouts to be Alistair, Sten, and Shale, and for varied reasons. One, I think everyone had to like Alistair. Alistair kind of fit that same role in Garrus as your best friend with that background, who was a little bit follower, not quite leader, wasn't quite sure of himself, especially from Mass Effect 1. But Alistair he was that reliable character. He was there and he was likable, and you felt for the guy. You felt for what he was going through. I really enjoyed this story with him, and Sten grew on me. Like, Sten was this stern, cast-turned character who didn't want to talk to you really, and he just not only did he become amazing at the end to the point where I believe my first playthrough, my warden left with Sten, but he had some of the funniest dialogue I've ever seen, especially with Morrigan. So I found him to be an awesome character. And then Shale, who didn't love Shale, honestly. I also enjoyed Liliana and Ogren, sorry. And once again, just she was a sweet character. He was a funny character. He was that character you love to hate, and they were just great to have around. And now when we sort of compare Dragon Age Origins, for me personally, I know people are going to hate it, but Dragon Age 2 didn't live anywhere up to those standards of companions. For me, I found Dragon Age 2 to be more substance over style. Oh, sorry, style over substance. They were, you look at characters like Fenris, who this is going to be a complicated video because I'm going to compliment Fenris later, but it kind of feels like they had an idea of this sort of fancy character they wanted to bring in, but didn't really give him the necessary backstory that you'd expect from BioWare. And I understand that his backstory is quite tragic. He is a empathetic character. He's got a lot going for him. But I mean, as a whole in Dragon Age 2, I just don't feel we really invested enough in the companions for me. Like, I didn't get into their stories anywhere near as much. Like, that might have just been me personally, but I didn't really bond with any of them, with the one exception being possibly Varric. Now, I don't hold Varric up to the high standard that a lot of other people do. He was fun. He was your friend. He was there from beginning to end, and I can't really say that he's a bad character because he's not. He's a pretty amazing character. He didn't set himself apart enough for me in that game. Now, then we come to Inquisition, and oddly enough, Inquisition actually had a pretty strong cast of characters. It really did. They put a lot of effort into it. They seemed to try really hard. But for me personally, the three characters that I enjoyed the most were Cullen, Josephine, and Liliana. And part of that could have been the way in which they had you, the way you engaged with them. So I found that quite often I was returning to the keep to go talk to the companions, and nothing had progressed for them yet, or nothing had changed, or they had nothing to say. Whereas it seemed like every time I went to talk to Cullen or Josephine or Liliana, something new was coming up, and I just found them more personable. I found them more sympathetic. They felt like they kind of felt like they had the weight of the world on their shoulders, like the Inquisitor did. So there was more bonding there, and I really enjoyed that. Especially the scenes like with Josephine, where she finally laid her hair down. With Cullen, when you're playing the game of, it's not chess, it's something else, but the game against him, just those moments, I think they really hit home for me. And as I said, it's not that any of these characters were not strong. It's just I think there's more. There can be more to them. Like, hands down, at the I left him to talk about last because for me he went from being maybe barely in my top 10 BioWare characters, like all characters, to a solid 2, if not 1, due to Trespasser, and that is Solus. Solus, hands down, because of Trespasser, became the strongest character they've ever introduced in my mind. Yes, because he's going to play a huge pivotal role in the game to come, and he played a large one in Trespasser. But I think the backstory they've introduced for him, I can't find, for me, a more sympathetic character. As I said in the last video, I look at Solus and I see someone who literally weighs the entire culture on his shoulders, and everything they lost, he blames himself for. I find him to be fascinating in every way, and I can't wait to see what they do with him. Now, part of the reason why I wanted to talk about these characters is, will we see any return in the next game? So we obviously had Varric transition from 2 to 3, but will we see any more? Me personally, this is just my opinion, I hope we don't see Varric. I think Varric's done his thing, let him move on. He's a reluctant hero at best. For him to turn up again under a third leader in a different country again, it wouldn't make sense. Let him go to Kirkwall and do his thing. But could we see Dorian return? Dorian obviously is from Tevinter. He still has a lot of story to tell in my mind. There is a hell of a lot to this character, and I think he would be awesome to integrate. But there is one other one I think would be good, and I freely admit I trashed him earlier. But Fenris. Fenris was that interesting character. As I said, some people liked him. I wanted to like him. There wasn't quite enough there for me to engage with in 2, but his history is rich. It is tragic. It has a lot it can bring to this next game. I would love to see him return as well. And I know it might seem odd, but when they bring these characters in, I kind of hope they don't try to make them fit the molds of the specializations like they did in Inquisition. Like, you must have one Templar and you must have one of this and one of that. Kind of let them do their own thing if you can. Maybe I'm asking too much from BioWare on that, but I just I find that sometimes they're introducing characters to these specializations that they don't quite fit into, but for some reason they're that specialization just because they needed one. So I'd like to see them maybe make them a bit more unique and hopefully run with that. But look, this is just all I had to say on the companions for this video. Next time, maybe I'll talk about gameplay. I don't know, we'll see what inspires me, and I'll try and release that probably on Friday or Saturday. Anyway, thank you for listening. Have a great time.